Welcome to Positive Filter with your host, Fuller Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. I'll do it the flow. I ask the questions. So, okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people. This is Fuller Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Filter. I'm joined by a special guest. Well, everyone's a special guest to me because they join me on the show. I'm joined by Miss Jazzmin Robinson. Now, I know this young lady. She's a phenomenal young woman. I think if I'm going to give her a little bio, let her introduce herself. But I think from my understanding, when she graduated Mason, she was like the only Black female electrical engineer majors. I probably got that wrong or right, but she is phenomenal. She's doing big things. And so but we have a special episode in regards to other things she's doing. But before we get into this episode, Jazzmin, please give the listeners a little bit of background on who you are, a little elevator pitch.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jazzmin Robinson. I'm a senior with an electrical engineering major from George Mason University. I graduated May 2021. I was the 5th Black engineer, electrical engineering degree as a female, and I was the 9th Black engineer overall. I am now working for the Department of Defense full-time as an electrical engineer. And I recently began a YouTube channel just focusing on college advice, career advice, and engineering concepts. I just accepted a position for a PhD program at University of Maryland. So exciting stuff. And I'm also a full-time caretaker for my father.
So one, congratulations. I think this is the first time I heard about the PhD. Shout out to you. Now we are students together because if you follow my journey, I got accepted to Mason's comm program. So dang, man, we're gonna be an unofficial cohort. Even though I'm already assuming that you're gonna make big monies with the engineering and STEM, and I'm doing communication. So maybe I can help you communicate, and you just help me get some money. I don't know, but pivoting, and I think this is what we actually really connected on in regards to taking care and supporting others. And so you did talk about becoming a full-time caregiver for your father. So, and I think that's what we're going to really focus this episode on, is that experience, how that's been for you, and some advice that you would give to someone that's a young person, such as yourself, because, obviously, not stereotypically, but non-traditionally, that's not usually a responsibility of a young person. Usually you become a caregiver when you're my age or older. But go back to that situation. How did this come about, and give us the background story on this experience?
Okay, so my second semester of my senior year in undergrad, which was around December of 2020, my father got sick, and it was super sporadic. It was in the midst of COVID. I had about 4 leadership positions, 7 400 level classes, and I was working. So I was balancing a lot as it was, in addition to trying to figure out next steps post-graduation, including like a full-time position, where I'm going to live, and the whole 9 yards. So I think my mom reached out to me and she says, "Hey, you should check on your dad. I'm worried." She was like, "I don't know. I think you should check on him. Something's not right." So I reached out, and my grandfather answered the phone. He's like, "Yeah, your dad's in the hospital. You should call the hospital." So at this point, I'm just checking in. I didn't know that I was walking into a new responsibility. So I called the hospital, and they're not able to give me any details right away until like later that night. And he had a family member there already, I think one of his cousins. And when I called and spoke to the doctor, finally, he was there for the entire day. By the time I spoke to a doctor, it was like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And they're like, "Yeah, your father's like extremely sick. He's on several forms of life support. His heart probably stopped at one point, and it's really strange that no one called 911. And, I don't live where my father is living, and I have no idea anything on how he got there, where he was doing, like where he was. So I had no background information. I just jumped right in and I was like, okay. It was strange to me because I felt like I had just spoken to him on FaceTime less than 24 hours before this occurred. And I want to say about 2 days later, I got notice that um, he was unresponsive still, not really responding to anything, not communicating, not like responding to movements. And they kind of just predicted he would never regain consciousness or have the ability to do anything other than, breathe on his own. So it was up to me for like, I think this was like final season. Every single day for like 2 weeks, they kept calling me, like, yeah, you have to make the decision whether or not to let him pass peacefully or put him on a long term ventilation, which was a trach. I chose the trach by the end of the 2 weeks. And the reason being is someone can't really sustain on a ventilator without having a trach because it just causes a lot of infections and everything like that. So moving forward, I walked into being legally next to kin. I had never heard of it, but if you do not have a power of attorney as an adult or parent and you have any children over the age of 18 and you are not married, then that child becomes legally next to kin. So I was responsible for making all of his decisions, including consenting to procedures, communicating with physicians, and acting as my father's caretaker, essentially.
I like literally my stomach like dropped a little bit because I just can't imagine being normal, being you're a young person. You're I'm not gonna call you a child, you're a woman, you're a young woman. But still like it feels overwhelming in addition to the responsibilities of schoolwork. So when you were going through this a lot of distances, did you actually go to the hospital and start, kind of like start doing the caregiving in the physical place, like logging into finals, or were you doing it remotely?
So in the beginning, I think it was just the weight and the pressure of everything kind of hitting the fan, especially with there being COVID. I only got to visit once. Everything else was just scheduling FaceTimes. I communicated with, I guess, healthcare physicians. I want to say every hour because back then I was really, really pressed to get an update, even though there was no changes for about 2 months before he regained consciousness. But in the beginning, I have a 90-year-old grandmother and I wanted her to be aware of his current status because it was very abrupt. He was very healthy, very fit prior to all of this, no pre-existing health issues, never hospitalized and on zero medication. So I was like, I'm going to go get my grandmother, let her see his current state because maybe she's really not understanding because of how abrupt everything was. And he was, and that time, because of COVID, everything was like closed off. So he was in a room in the hospital that was completely like closed off. Like we couldn't touch him and we had to communicate through her phone. And I remember my grandmother, I brought her there in a wheelchair and she's like telling my father, "Hi, this is your mom. I just want to know that I want you to know that I love you and you're doing fine and I'm going to see you soon. And I know I need you to wake up." She was like, "I need you to wake up. We need you, Corey." And I was like, "Oh, wow." And then she puts the phone down and she's like, "How did I do?" And I was like, wow. I realized that all of us adults are just trying to make it because she was asking me for confirmation on how she
Yeah.
did during the call. So I think she did great. I didn't actually say anything. I let her do that. And moving forward, I think that we probably didn't see him again physically because of COVID. I don't think I saw him until maybe March. So December, January, February,
Wow.
March,
Wow.
other than
So
via FaceTime.
so let's just how were you doing day to day? As we see, you're in a very demanding academic field. You're heavily involved. I knew you were heavily involved when I saw you on campus. So how did you balance that? Or during that time when you were dealing with this, did you start taking things off and say, yo, did you start including friends or, sorority sisters? I didn't say that you, all those things, but involving other people and say, hey, I'm going through this. take this off my plate, or were you keeping it private and just going through all the responsibilities you had at
I
school?
think because everything was fairly new and different and a lot, I don't think I shared it with anyone until I had to.
Okay.
So I continued my activities,
Mhm.
all of my leadership positions, all of my classes I worked. And then it got to a point where I really didn't have the time to work anymore because of all of the calls and consenting to different treatments. And I was notified, I want to say after his 50th hospitalization, that all of this was caused by COVID, and that he had a stroke due to COVID. And, the stroke just landed in major parts of his brain. So after that, it was kind of like it was a very new virus at the time. Nobody really knew what to do or how this was going to end up. So kind of just, praying daily, asking for direction, guidance, strength, wisdom, discernment. Um, and at the end of the day, I think that school, my leadership positions were kind of an outlet. So it wasn't even that I wanted to
Mm,
continue to communicate about it with anyone at school because I felt like that was my only escape. Everyone else, like everyone in my family, were reaching out, like, you got this, you're doing well, praying for you. And it was like such a big deal to everyone else that it was kind of overwhelming because everyone's reaching out, like, how are you feeling? I heard about your dad. And I'm like, oh, brother. Like people that I hadn't spoken to in such a long
yeah.
time. And then I really realized how serious this was. And back then, since my father was unconscious, it wasn't really caring for him wasn't a big deal. It was kind of the weight of all of the decisions and things that were
Yeah.
occurring
Yeah.
that were like life or death.
Yeah. And so you were so basically for what I'm hearing is that these activities in school was your outlet, and then because you were getting inundated with people from family and stuff, by not sharing that, that was actually giving you a space to say,
Mhm.
okay, I can be Jazzmin, the student leader, and just put on that role and not have to worry about these other things because people in this space won't be asking me about it.
Absolutely.
So it's almost like an escape in that space that you kind of reprieve. You needed that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
So, like,
Wow.
I know that at some points I had calls all throughout the day, all throughout the night, 3 a.m.,
Yeah.
4 a.m., 5 a.m., 2 a.m.
Oh my goodness.
Whichever time that something occurred and they needed my consent, I had to consent verbally because of COVID, and I had to speak to 3 different physicians. And it could be something very sporadic. So it could be in class, at work, during a meeting. So sometimes I did have to share. And immediately people are like, oh my gosh, like you can go. I'm like, no, it's fine. It's fine. I'll be right back. Like, I don't want to not participate because this is my outlet. And I think a lot of people didn't realize it until over a period of time. And they're like, oh, okay, she's fine. Like she can manage it. Everything's okay. And I think that now the role as a caretaker has shifted drastically. And thankfully, this wasn't the case in school. I think everything happens in perfect timing because now things are a lot different because he is conscious, he is cognitive, he speaks and communicates like a normal person, he remembers everything from prior to him getting sick.
Oh,
And
okay.
now it's like, I want food. Like, when are you coming to see me? What are you doing? He's calling me throughout the day. So it's a different level of caretaking in addition to, communicating with the healthcare physicians and scheduling appointments and being up to date on his care, but also I have to support him throughout this journey as well. So now I think all February and March of this year, I spent time taking pictures of his body, showing him, what has happened to him from all of the medical neglect and abuse that has occurred and what we're dealing with now. So now he's completely aware of everything that's going on. It's just a matter of helping him understand a timeline of events because I think he's a little shook on the timeline. So very, very different, but also I am very grateful to be able to communicate with him because for
Hmm.
all of the past year, I was communicating with him with no response, him not recognizing me, um, him not able to actually hold a conversation. So a lot of stuff started happening sporadically as the brain started to recover.
So with that being said, now the responsibility is different. Uh, are you able now? Are you? I mean, I know power of attorney making decisions, but is he able to now make decisions a little bit with you? Like saying like, did now are you kind of putting some of this on, is putting this on paper, because these lessons sparked it. I think we talked about this earlier. It's like you don't know to do all these things, paperwork and all this, until something happens, and now you're playing catch up. But now you have this window to do it. So, are you able to communicate with him enough now to say, like, you got a little bit of what he wants in case things go down, like what his ideas are?
So actually, it's very strange, but like this year, 2022, I think that he's a lot more cognitive and aware of what I'm doing, my role in everything. And I think for the most part, if he doesn't know anything or anyone has any questions, he'll say, "Hey, you can talk to my daughter, call her." Like he knows exactly how to contact me, where to find my phone number. So that is like a lot of weight off of my shoulders that he does have that ability now. I think before this occurred, it was kind of a lot because I was kind of worried about, what could be happening. But now he can advocate for himself to a certain extent. Like he's not going to sit there and not eat or not drink. Like he can actually communicate his needs, and that's a huge load off of me. And now, since he has nothing else to do, he also keeps tracks of some of his appointments that are made, dates, days of the week. I try to like explain to him when I'll be there, what I'm bringing in regards to food, snacks, whatever, just to have him look forward to something. So a lot of things have shifted.
I got that. Now, I'm thinking of myself in thinking about being a father in this role. And I would want, like, I'm also picturing in my mind, like, while I'm really grateful, and I said, like I told you, you're an amazing daughter, I'd also feel kind of guilty, like, go live life. And so do you ever get that from your dad? Like, I know you're doing your thing, you're taking care of me, but I want you to go travel. I want you to be young. I know you're worried about me, but I want you to, take care of yourself. You ever get that kind of conversation? Those things come up?
Not at the moment. I think it's still very, very new. So I'm not entirely sure if he knows the weight of everything. Even though things have gotten better and progressed from a cognitive perspective, right now it's just dealing with all of the aftermath of the abuse and neglect. That now it's like us trying to unpack this. So he doesn't necessarily talk about stuff like that. I think that it's probably heavier on him, and such a like mind-blowing experience for him that I think that in the beginning he thought that he just grew old. He didn't know that, oh my gosh, it has only been a year since
Oh,
I got
wow.
sick and this occurred, because it is so bizarre. And I think that I do a good job at balancing things and assuring that, I'm still hanging out with my friends, I'm still traveling, I'm still like living my life and trying to excel from an academic and professional perspective as well.
Wow. So, what are some things you learned out of this? I mean, and I say that, like, I know that wasn't even like a weird, I don't know how to like say it better. Like, what would be some like lessons, man? What would you say to the young people? Like, I mean, like, if this is your platform, like, I would tell anyone my age, these are things you need to know how to do. Like, what was some lessons you learned from this?
I would say the biggest thing to me that was so mind blowing is the amount of neglect and abuse when I was present. I think that some of the facilities that he arrived to and to be sepsis after a short period of time, after a long period of time. He now has 22 stage 4 bed sores. And that, I didn't know the severity of a bed sore, and I didn't know what signs to look for in order to pinpoint neglect and abuse. So I think that, people can say whatever and do whatever when you're present, but I think it's like the time that you're not there and looking at your loved one and pointing out some of the things that don't seem right. So for me, I thought that I was doing the right things by like checking in, making sure I'm present on a consistent basis. And when I needed to, I contacted Legal Aid Ombudsman, whose role was to advocate for people that were in nursing facilities that could not advocate for themselves when they're not getting the care that they need to receive. And I think that I thought that that was doing something. It really essentially did nothing. It was just a check to check the boxes to say that you did it. And then over time, I realized, some of the things that I needed to look for that scream neglect and abuse, like, weight loss, 60 pounds, losing 60 pounds, and someone's teeth not being brushed, and everything like that you would think that was occurring that was not occurring. And unfortunately, these can lead to life-threatening issues. And because my father wasn't able to communicate and advocate for himself and understand what was happening around him and to him, a lot of these issues occurred. And with COVID being a thing, in the beginning, I wasn't even able to be there in person
Mm,
outside of the FaceTime
mm,
call. So I think some of the things that I would recommend is not only legal aid ombudsman, but there are also ways to get, I guess, advice and resources through disability law centers, depending on the state. Um, there is medical assistance services. There are coordinating care advocates, and there's also departments for aging and rehabilitation. There are Office of Healthcare Quality, regulatory agencies. And I think that one of the biggest things I think that I'm utilizing now is the fact that every single day from December 5th, 2020 to April 28th, 2022, I log every single thing that happens in regards to me picking up the phone and calling and speaking to a nurse, or me consenting to any type of procedure with a healthcare physician. Everything needed to be logged on the time, the date, who I spoke with, and what they told me in detail. Because now, when looking at malpractice, I can refer to these things. And it's super easy to refer back to in regards to any type of unpacking that needs to be done. So I would definitely say heavy on the note taking. It can be a lot in the
mm.
moment, but I was quick to, take out some notes, write it down. And sometimes I had to handwrite it and put it in my computer later. But I think it was super important because there was so much going on that if I didn't write this stuff down, there's no way that I was going to remember what happened.
I think that's a very powerful lesson. I mean, honestly, even like I said, with adults can learn this too. Well, keep on saying that you're adult, but like older. I keep on thinking so much, man. Like you, my student, I thinking, that I don't realize how old I am. But the point is, I think that's a great lesson about documentation, receipts. I don't think a lot of people realize that, and words and power have matter. Like now, because of you, I remember I ran into you in the hallway and I said, what we're going on now, me and my wife early on got this in writing. Like we got what was going to happen to us and who says what to us, because I don't think a lot of people understand the mortality that they have, right? Like you think that, emergencies or things will never happen to you. And so you don't plan, and then it happens and you don't like who's getting what or who's doing what. And so I think that I learned very early on and now I'm talking about that too, is taking notes, and receipts matter. Um,
Yeah.
wow. Like, because at the end of the day too, I was thinking about this as a caregiver, is that I think you have to be ready to advocate and ask questions. Like now, for what I'm hearing, you're going to hear like like when you go to the doctor's visits. I'm concerned that my spouse, that if you're the older, the spouse, my spouse is losing a lot of weight. What's going on with that? Are they eating? Can you tell me about their food? And then they're
Right.
going to say that, and then you take notes on what they said, or like, I noticed that they're having an adverse reaction to this medication. Can you tell me why? And then you take notes on that, and you just really document that stuff.
Absolutely. And even if it's something as simple as maybe not me questioning anything, but even if it's just a check in and they're saying, hey, their vital signs are fluctuating. We're having this department or this team coming to look at things, and we're going to see what they're going to say, or any tests that are ran. I know that sometimes when pinpointing infections, they take x rays of the chest and CT and EEG and all of these things. And those things are super important, even when you're just reaching out for advocacy. So it's like super
Mhm.
important that I'm up to date on all of those details on what's happening, because when it comes to reaching out, it's so much easier to get someone else's support when you have those kind of details.
Now, so you took the advanced course. You speaking all this medical language. Um,
My
like,
body.
how did did you Google this stuff, or do you have someone that you bounced ideas off of? Like, are you just going on WebMD? Like, like how you figuring out all this stuff?
So I think over time I learned. Honestly, in the beginning, I had no idea what anything was. I am not in the medical field, and I hope
Yeah.
to not be. So I honestly just wrote everything that they said because I had no idea what it meant. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, if I needed them to explain something, I would have them explain it and I would ask questions and say, hey, what does that mean? What's going on? And a lot of the times, I think that one of the mind blowing parts of about this is the doctor's tone was very monotone and they were just like straight to the point and no cares, no mood, no emotions. And I think that was different because at first it used to make my heart stop. And I'm like, like every single time I got a phone call from a physician, I'm thinking they're going to tell me that he died. Like that's how
Mhm.
the conversation kind of went in regards to tone and mood. And I think that anytime that I was learning something new and I had all these medical terms, I was writing them down and getting a definition from whoever I'm talking with. And then I think as I'm communicating with other healthcare professionals, I'm bouncing those ideas, any type of resources, any advice, suggestions. And then when it got to the point where I had to, step away from my part-time position at school, I started like needing documentation. So now some of the physicians were helping me like write letters for me, especially when things got to like final seasons, final projects, and I'm still dealing with it and everything kind of hit the fan. And I was like, okay, now it got to the point where, I kind of need to let them know because I kind of needed some type of extension or support in some way, just in case, I had to consent to a procedure, I got a phone call or anything like that.
Wow. So, well, I had a thought, and then I was like, wow. Um, at what point do you like, did you ever have like, just I want to go in a room and scream? Did you have one of those days, or it kind of just snapped and not say snapped, I meant like you just blinked and now it's like months later.
I think I just blinked and it's months later. I think
Yeah.
sometimes now I have to, you know, force boundaries because I am so accessible. Because at first, he wasn't communicating, so it wasn't to this extent that I needed to think about anything like that. So now he's initiating calls, he's calling me, he's reaching out, he's wondering when am I going to be there and what am I going to bring him. And I think that me establishing boundaries now is kind of difficult. And I think that in the beginning, I was kind of just going with the flow. And now I sit down now and I'm like, wow, it's been that long. It really doesn't feel like that time went by, but also so much has changed throughout the past year and a half. I think that it wasn't really that difficult until his brain started recovering. And then I started seeing different sides of him. I think his first response had to be March of 2021, and it was just screaming and crying. And it was random because I'm used to communicating without any response. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't prepared for this. I got to call back. This is too much. I'm going to call back at another time. I'm asking like physicians, like, is this normal? Does he always cry? Like, I have never heard him speak, communicate. And I think as time went on, those responses became very, very different. I had never seen anyone with any type of brain injury. So it was just a lot in regards to how he started swallowing, drinking. I know for a while I wasn't even going to attempt to feed him because of how it looked and how intense things were. So
Mhm.
I think that over time, the responsibility as a caregiver changed and kind of like changed due to his current state.
Mm. I don't know. I think I really wanted to ask more questions, but I think, I think that I just want to express like on this that I knew I had to reach out to you because I think, as I said, when we were going through what we're going through, and people may know this that are offline, that just with the way that you did it with Grace, you're incredibly strong. And I was like, I don't know. I just think it gives me a motivation. Like, I think I actually need to write things down. Like, I'm learning so many lessons from the youth. You know what I'm saying? Like, I need to write things down. And because honestly, I was even thinking about that, like writing things always down, like being ready and learning. And I don't know. I don't know. This is like one of the few times where I'm like flabbergasted and I wanted to say something, but like, I think that your journey and what you're going through is just so powerful.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think a lot of people, I think I didn't realize um, how great the things that I'm doing, like how great they are, because I think a lot of people are just so shocked that I even took the stance to do these things and to take on these responsibilities when I didn't have to. And for me, I'm like, I didn't feel like I had to, but I'm like, why wouldn't I? If there is no one else, why wouldn't I do these things? And I think sometimes I feel a little guilty. Like if I don't answer a phone call, if I'm not able to visit, I'm like, oh, I feel bad. But then that's when, establishing those boundaries come into play because I have to have time for myself. I have to have time to have fun. I have to have time to do work. So a lot on the sides of setting boundaries now that he is cognitive and he can reach out and he can call me
Yeah.
and everything like that.
Yeah, it makes I think there's a powerful lesson in that too, because I think that it always goes back to that old age thing where it's like you can't take care of someone else unless you take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
You can't, you got to put on your own oxygen mask before you put on someone else's. And so there is that boundary setting, but at the same time, you're still going to want to put the oxygen mask on someone else. So it's like, how do you find that balance? Like, and
Absolutely.
I think a lot of uh, I mean, there's a whole aging parents group at Mason now because there's a lot of people that are staff members that are going into this new generation where they're taking care of their parents, and it's like that's that same balance, right? Like they still want to perform well at work. Maybe they have kids and they got to be, they're in the middle of taking care of their kids, but then also taking care of someone over them. But then they got to take care of themselves because then they can't take care of their kids or that person. So there's
Absolutely.
some powerful lessons in that, like boundary setting. But I think the weird thing that I always have this thing too is like even with boundary setting, there is an innate guilt, right? Like I had to do this because um, I'm the person. So if I don't do it or take care of this person, no one else going to do it, and so you put that on you. Like, and I think that's harder with medical stuff too. Like, if I don't say this, then no one else is going to say it, so I got to say it. And then I think there's also this guilt too. Like, and maybe this is me projecting, so you can check this too. But like, I'm like, sometimes when I'm living good and feeling good, healthy, I be thinking about like, dang though, like, but that person I care about, they don't feel so good, and I be feeling like survivor's guilt, like
Oh yeah.
the fact that I could just walk normal, then I feel weird that someone else can't walk normal, and I feel guilty about that
Yeah.
rather than assume that it's a blessing, like wow, like everything little thing, like my health is a blessing. I be feeling the survivor's guilt, like wow, I got good health, but someone I care about don't have good health. I feel guilty about that. You ever feel that sense?
Yeah, and it's so funny because I think I just journaled about this same topic of about survivor's guilt. I want to say 2 days ago, and what I learned during that time was acknowledging the difficulty of balancing good things. And you know, I think that it's baffling when you realize that you have the ability to go from one place to another. And I think that some of those things to avoid feeling like you are feeling that kind of guilt or incapability for showing up for all of your demands as you favor yourself and have peace. Have peace within, you'll see favor in everything else that you do. So you have to determine the peace, set the pace by the energy, and the faith and the worship of others, and then create your own, like, I guess, like as a larger scale, sometimes moving towards something that you aren't so sure about. Like you think about like, oh my gosh, I'm stressed. Oh my gosh, why do I feel like I feel bad for doing any of these things? How do I feel like I'm prioritizing myself? And I think the lesson of it all is recognizing that you can have balance, silencing the noise around you, all of those thoughts. Sometimes you can have good thoughts, but those negative thoughts of like you second guessing your place and your role and how you're living your life. And then having that self awareness to align yourself with balance. And I think peace is the biggest indicator. So I think that, when you spend that time with yourself and realign yourself to show up where you need to be, you would no longer have those thoughts.
Yeah, it makes sense. One thing is I thought about too, and I wonder if this is your thought, is that as I take care of someone else, like when I'm taking or helping with someone else, I mean, I know this is selfish, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I get this innate feeling like this, I'm helping someone, that altruism, I feel useful. But then at the end of the day, I'd be like, I hope to God that if I'm in this shape, I hope I'm in this shape that someone will do this for me. I be thinking about that all the time.
Absolutely.
Like, yo,
Absolutely.
if I'm down and out like this, who going, am I caring for someone else? If this happened to me, I swear, please God, let someone take care of me too. Like I need to, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think that also is kind of a tricky situation, because I think when I was making decisions when he wasn't cognitive or conscious, I think that, putting myself in his shoes, that's how I thought about it in the beginning. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to sound selfish because everyone doesn't want what I want. I may want someone to do all these things, but that doesn't mean he wants that. So I think taking a step back and actually like thinking, from his perspective, like how could this benefit him? Not me, but him. So I think that it has its pros and cons, but I think I always think like, dang, I hope that if this were me, someone would take the lead. Someone would think, okay, I think that Jazzmin would want this. And I don't know if I feel really confident about that. I'm like, I don't know if anyone would step up and take these responsibilities, because I will say I do a lot. I don't think there's a day that goes by that I'm not, doing some type of research, scheduling some type of appointment. I think that it's also that I'm full-time, kind of like a parent. It's 25/8. So as I stated earlier, I can get phone calls at any time of my day, and I could be cooking breakfast and I have to like hurry up, stop, go get my computer, take notes, figure out what they want, try to like cater to this in this situation on the fly, no matter where I am. So I think that, that's very, very different. And I don't know. I'm like always thinking like, would anyone else do this? Drop what they're doing? It's a cater to me in my care.
You're wondering it. I'm straight up. I'm at the point now. I'm just asking people like, yo, Maggie, you gonna take care of me? Like, I'll be asking my wife, like, you gonna do this for me? Like, like, so like, I think that might be layer 2 is thinking it. Layer, step 2 of this is now like I'm putting it in writing. And I'm saying to people like, yo, when I'm down and out, man, I need you to take care. Like, I be telling my best friend Hillard, like, yo, if this goes down, I'm like, now I'm almost like, not only in writing, I'm just telling people like, I'm gonna need you. like, this is what this has revealed to me about
Absolutely
all this life and stuff is like, I think now I don't want to leave it up to will that like maybes. I'm just going to explicitly ask, hey, if I need help, will y'all help me? Like,
no,
and they're like, why would you even ask? And why would you even ask that? And they'd be like, just in case. And like, hopefully it never happens, but you know what I'm saying?
Right. And I think these are conversations that people don't typically have when they're younger and they're healthy. And I think that I just could not have imagined me having this role. I don't think I like ever thought about anything like this, because my parents are typically like, they're a lot on the younger side, a lot on the healthier side. So there was never a time we sat down and was like, yeah, if anything happens, this is what I want you to do. So it was like the physicians were like, yeah, what do you think your dad wants? And I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea.
Yeah. Now I know explicitly what my father-in-law wants. I know what my wife wants. I mean, I'm saying but let me phrase. We know explicitly now because right. We had to be taught this. This is not something we learn. But now the conversation is very open, very open. And
that's awesome.
Those are lessons I'm learning, and we're learning as you go along, and going back into this. All right. Well, I can go on and on.
I have one more comment. I think in the
beginning, hold up. Yeah, definitely share the comment.
Okay. In the beginning, I was actually feeling guilty for the decisions that I made, because I'm like, now he's suffering. I can't believe that, he's suffering. He's going through this type of a pain. And I think now that he's cognitive, I feel okay with my decisions because he's okay with it. And he tells me all the time how appreciative he is of me, and he thanks me all the time. And, in the beginning, it was really hard to do all these things for someone that does not recognize you. Like, he doesn't know who I am, why I'm here, who he's talking to. I'm like, hey, do you know who I am? He's like, I'm Jazzmin. I'm your daughter. He's like, oh, okay. So I think having that kind of confirmation from my father now has helped a lot.
I love it. I was about to say, I definitely feel that too.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm going to part of the show that we call Shot for Shot.
Okay.
Where you get to ask me any random question. I ask you any random question. Totally off topic. Shot for shot. Do you want to go first? I'll go first.
You go first.
All right. So you're a world traveler, right? I see you. I see you on the gram, stunting, thighs out, skies out, thighs out, bikinis, all that. Living life, living good. That's why I said you're going to get that STEM money. I need to get on your level. Um, but beyond that, where's on your bucket list to travel now? Like you've been all over the world. Where's some new places you have to go visit, and why? Why you have to go visit those places?
I want to go visit Tokyo, Greece. Tokyo, Greece. Um, where else? I can't really think. I think those are top two: Tokyo, Greece. I'm about to go to Mexico soon. Oh, and Spain. So I was in a Spanish immersion program for high school, 4-year program, where I was fully immersed into the new language, and the entire class went and studied abroad in Spain. And I didn't go because I wasn't really confident that I wanted to go. And my mom's like, "Yeah, if I spend this money, are you sure you want to go?" And I'm like, "Probably not." So I didn't go.
But you're fluent in Spanish.
Fluent in Spanish, yes.
Dang. And then why Tokyo? Because you like anime?
I saw it on TV a lot. It looks cool. Nothing
There you
big.
go. And then Spain. That's Spain. What was the other place?
Greece.
Why Greece?
I think that it's super monumental and it holds a lot of value in regards to a lot of things that occurred in history. And I think that it would be great to experience it and learn a lot more about it than I already do. And I don't know, these are the only countries that I'm leaning towards right now. I don't know if I'll get interested in any more countries later on in time, but with me starting this grad program, I'm not really sure how much time I'm going to have to travel at all. So keeping the list very short.
Well, I'm going to send you this app called Ben. I'm curious to see how many percentage of the world you've seen.
Okay.
It's already probably higher than mine, but I love traveling. All right. What's your question for me?
My question for you is, I know that you are heavily involved, and I know that you're a father, you're a husband, and you're in school full time, either communicating with others and extracurriculars, working, you're a part of faculty. How do you balance it all?
One, I'm glad that you gave me credit for something I haven't started yet. So I will be a student full time in the well, not full time. One, I won't be full time in the fall.
Okay.
Because my wife was like, "You better take one class at a time because I need you home." So that's that one. And then two, how do I balance it all? I don't. That is something that has been one of those growth areas since I was 6 years old about someone that does too much, and so I'm continuously learning about doing too much. I'm the king of doing this, doing that. Busy more is always better. So one of the things that has been one of my growth things is to learn how to say no. Obviously, I'm not good at that yet. Like when someone asks me to join something, I'm so excited and honored. I say yes. And so one of the things I'm really actively working on over the summer, I started this practice a long time ago where I used to write out all the roles that I had, just like you just did, father and all that. And I'm like, dang. And then I'm like ranking it like, am I still being a good father and husband and friend? Those are always my top three. Husband, number one, father to my boys, and then a friend to my friends. And then those, like, literally those are my main identities. And then a guy that works at Mason and an alpha and all these, like, I don't even have alpha as top. I think alpha is probably like top 5, like roles in my identity, right?
Right.
But it's going to fluctuate, right? Like as I go to school, maybe this goes up. And so I had to practice what I preach, where I put like, as I go into this program and I start in the fall with the one class, what do I have to give up? Which is going to be very hard for me. Like, obviously can't give up being a father or a friend, you know what I'm saying? Right. But I got to give up something that's extracurricular.
Right.
And
so your priorities shift due to whatever your responsibilities are.
Yeah. And also just like, this is the part where I'm like, I don't know if you give me career advice, but then I also have to say like all these extra things I'm doing, right? I love being involved, but at the end of the day, too, bottom line, is it contributing to my growth or is it just contributing to my ego? So for instance, being involved in all this stuff, does that advance my leadership or whatever skill set, or does it just make me feel good to have titles?
Right.
And so I had to strategically think about that. Do I have the answers? Am I getting good, better? I believe I'm getting a lot better than I was when I think I hit a wall of burnout during COVID because I was doing so much. But I still think I have a ways to go of saying no to certain things because it's hard. you know.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was a good point, though, to sit down and think about whether or not you're doing this for the title or advancing your skill set. Like, are you actually benefiting from this? And I think that that's powerful in itself.
Yeah, I mean, this podcast, I don't get paid for it, but I'm not letting this one go because this is one of my outlets, right?
Right,
Uh,
right,
Obviously, I think this actually got me into my con program because I talked about media and stuff.
right,
But there is some extracurriculars, right? Like a community involvement. Yes, I want to impact the community. I want to, you know, some volunteer opportunity. But at the end of the day, like, what good is volunteering in the community if I'm not kind of contributing to the community of my home? And
exactly.
this line still burns in me. Like, my boss, I love her, Tracy. I even call her out. She said this junk one time, and it really hit me. She said, "What good is being a man out in the streets if you're not the man at home?" And
Right.
I was like, "Ouchie!" Like, why you say that to me? Like, what's good at having a reputation, all that, if you can't even be present at home? And I really thought about that. I was like, I know there was times where I'm ripping and running, and I wasn't, like, already as a young father. My kid's not even grown yet, and I feel like, man, I need to tighten up. Like, I'm doing too much. So keep me posted if you see me doing too much, and it's like, dang, Phil, you just got another volunteer role. I thought you was going to take it easy. You can check me. My mentors check me. They be doing things like, I'm like, oh, I just got asked to do this, and instead of saying, they say congrats. But then they'll say, congrats, do you really want to do it? And I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, no, I turned it down. Right. So
right.
I've been saying no a lot more. I'm getting better at it.
Do you think that you have to sacrifice a lot more when you have all these other roles and responsibilities? When you look at, oh, I have kids, I have a wife, I have friends, some things I have to say no to because I have to have time for all of these other things.
Yeah. I do feel like I had to start saying no, because if these things are of importance, and as quick math, I only have but so much time in the day. Like,
Right.
the law of equivalency, right? If I dedicate this, then this is not getting it.
Absolutely.
So if I'm doing this outside the house, then I'm not in the house. I can't be more than one place. Or even, like, like I said, oh, I could do everything. Like, I mean, I will say what jacked me up a little bit was, like, my wife was like, yeah, just because you can jump on a meeting on Zoom doesn't mean, like, you should just accept everything because you're at home. Like, stop jumping on meetings, like these meetings that you thought, I was like, oh, but I'm not really listening. I got my camera off and sound, they can't hear me. But she's like, but why? And so, I mean, that's still a lesson. I just jumped on a webinar like last night for no reason. I wasn't even there. I was just listening. I was like, okay, there's a sense of grown FOMO. I don't want to miss out. There's also a sense of achievement, but at the same time, this is where these life lessons of learning from you taking care of people was really important. Being around people was like, okay, at the grand scheme of things, like, that's not worth my time. So I say this now: if you see me doing too much, I give you, Jazzmin, I give you permission. All my friends already have permission to check me, and hold me accountable while you're in Japan.
Absolutely,
Agreed.
absolutely. And I think it's powerful. I think it's a lifelong journey in regards to pouring into yourself and trying to balance everything and prioritizing yourself and your family. And I think essentially if you're prospering in one area, then your another area is going to suffer.
Yep, balance, law of equivalency. All
Absolutely.
right. So there's been a great episode. I think you shared a lot of gems that like I told you I was going to take notes. Um, this is the part of the show I call shout outs and plugs, meaning show love, say things, people you want to appreciate, anyone. Shout outs and plugs, and then plugs. Plugs will be anything where you want people to follow up with you, what you're working on, things that you want people to be known about, because I'll put that in the show notes for them to support you. So shout outs and plugs.
So, shouting out all of the people that have supported me throughout this tough time. I want to say some of my sorority sisters, my mom, my stepdad, some of my best friends, Faith, Angelica, Alexis, all of these people, and to the utmost, King of all kings, Lord of all lords, God himself, because I don't think that I could do this without him. So I think that's it.
And then plugs, anything, your handle, people, how people can reach you if you want them to reach you, and then the things that you're working on or things that they can do to support you.
So I have a YouTube channel and I have a video about my dad and about being a caretaker as a young adult and about all the things that I was balancing during my senior year of undergrad. In addition to that, I have a GoFundMe, and you can reach me on probably YouTube and LinkedIn. Those are the two handles that I give out the most. And I'll send those to you.
Perfect. I'll put all that in the show notes. Definitely support Jazzmin and her family. And, just send them, cover them in positive thoughts, prayers, whatever you believe in. But also, if you feel so inclined beyond prayers and good vibes, if you want to contribute to her GoFundMe, please do so. And also support her on YouTube and bring awareness, because maybe when you share this video or share her story, this could help someone else. Like I said, it helped me. It can help so many other people. So, Positive Filter listeners, this has been a great episode. If you want to leave a voicemail for the podcast, it's 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. Share this episode with your family members and friends. Supporting the podcast is how this grows. Thank you so much for joining, and we're out. Thank you for listening to Positive Filter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.